How do you get ahead financially in life? Well, by saving money. Sounds good in theory, but what are some overlooked ways to save money in real life? Diane has some tricks starting right now.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
If you get locked down in a pandemic and can't work, or if you lose your job or have a health problem and can't work, you know what really helps? Having money in the bank, savings. How can you put your kids through college or save for retirement? Well, again, savings. But we've all got limited income. We've all got expenses. We have to live. So how can you start saving when you've got expenses and limited income? How do you get started? Diane Cunha is back, and today she's going to answer questions submitted by you, our listeners, and our clients and subscribers to the Hoyes Michaelis newsletter. Diane, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, savings. This is one of those topics where, I don't know. Yes, of course you should save. Mm-hmm. The only way you can possibly build wealth is if there is more coming in than goes out.
Exactly.
It's just simple math. There is no way to do that. But in the year 2020, there was this big virus thing, which you probably heard about. We're now in 2021, and it's still here. Mm-hmm. People are hurting. Mm-hmm. Incomes are lower for some people because their business doesn't exist anymore. They've been locked down. Mm-hmm. For some people, expenses are even higher. But even if your expenses aren't higher, if your income's down, I got less money coming in. I still have to pay my rent and buy my groceries. So all this talk about savings, it's like, well, okay, it's not really my priority. Mm-hmm. So why is it we need to think about savings? Why is this something we need to talk about?
I think that this should be kind of like a wake-up call for people, because back in, a year ago during this time, right, we had no idea it was going to be a shutdown. Like, this is unheard of. And when you look back at March of last year, and when they're saying, all right, we're extending, they slowly progressed it by extending March break for the kids, and people were just buying things as if it was the end of the world. But what ended up happening was, when you see in social media and the news and all these topics of like, how am I going to pay my rent? So these people, all clients and just the general public, were terrified because they're living paycheck to paycheck, no savings. They're thinking, what am I going to do with this shutdown? So this being a massive wake-up call for people, it's being, okay, let's reorganize and review our finances and look for the future.
Yeah, I guess if the pandemic starts and I can't go to work, or it doesn't have to be a pandemic, it can be anything. I can get sick, I can, lose my job, whatever. If I've got $1 million in the bank, I guess I'll go on vacation, I'll go up to my cottage. It doesn't matter, right?
Yes.
I'm good. It's when I have $0, and in fact, I've also got debt, and then now there's zero money coming in. That's exactly the definition of living paycheck to paycheck.
Exactly.
Then I'm totally pooched. So you and I are both believers in the first step is to eliminate your debt, or at least reduce it to a manageable level. I mean, if you own a house, I guess you're not going to eliminate your mortgage right off the bat.
Right.
Maybe you've got a car loan or something like that. So if I have debt, then do you agree with me that eliminating that debt, certainly the high interest rate debt, is much more important than savings? Or do you think, well, no, I think you should still also be building your savings at the same time? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that some people can't do both, but I always tell all clients, I say, at the end of the day, anything is better than zero. If you can put review your budget, see how much you can put towards debt, be consistent with it. For a credit card, if you want to pay down a credit card, you can't continue to use it. So you have to be realistic of how much you can put away or how much you can pay down, and put some money away. Maybe when you build up a good sum of money, plump it down on the card, because you don't want to come back and then use it for an emergency. That's what you want to avoid in general.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer in paying down debt because you got to pay interest on it.
Correct.
And if you got something like a credit card where the interest rate is 20%, then every dollar you put against it is saving you, in effect, it's earning you 20% in after-tax dollars.
Exactly.
So that's huge. So I've always been a big believer in paying down debt. Now, there are other, financial experts who say, well, yes, you should pay down debt, but you got to get into the habit of saving. So it's a good idea, even if it's only $5 or $10 a paycheck, to put that away. That way you get into the habit. I don't know. I still think I would rather be saving the 20% on interest, but I get it. This is a psychological thing as much as a financial thing. And so throwing a couple of bucks into a savings account, okay, I'm paying a little bit more in interest perhaps than if I plowed all of it against it. But by putting it aside, I'm getting into that habit. And you hit on a key point, and that is, great, I paid down my credit card. I can't rack it up again. That kind of gets...
You've got to pay it like a loan, essentially.
You've got to get rid of it and be done with it. So, okay, before we talk about practical tips, I got one other question for you.
Okay.
What's the point? That's my question. So... do I really want to be some 90-year-old guy with all this money saved up and I'm too old to enjoy it? I can't go anywhere. I can't bungee jump anymore because I'm 90 years old. I haven't bungee jumped yet, but what's the point? Should I not be using my money today when I'm young and healthy, when, my kids are still around, my parents are still around? Is it not more important to have some fun today, particularly after going through the pandemic?
Right.
What's the point of saving all this money for the future? Should I not be focused a little bit more on living for today?
Well, I think
I love asking her questions that aren't on the cue cards. This is what makes this show fun.
I think that many people don't realize, and this is something that we talk about in credit counseling, that when you get older, your paychecks are not going to be the same. They potentially will be lower, and you'll be making significantly less than what you're making when you were working. So how will you balance that? If your bills are, for example, $3,000 a month for everything, and you're receiving $4,000 right now, but then your Canada pension on old age, you're getting $1,500 because it's such a significant drop. What about you have to come up with a difference. So it's best to start now. You might think it's too late, but I mean, at the end of the day, compound interest happens with RSPs and whatnot, but and also you need to have balance in your life. It's not saying don't spend your money now. It's saving some now for what's going to happen the next 6 months, which we talked about in another podcast of expect the unexpected expenses, because they will come up. You're going to need fall clothes for your child, and maybe after all this, you're going to want to go on vacation, but that's okay. It's just about balance and dividing and reviewing your budget in general.
Yeah, I think that's the key, balance. So it doesn't make sense to me to save every last penny so that you can't even do anything.
Right.
But it also doesn't make sense to me to be going into debt so that you can have a lot of fun now.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what is the balance? Okay, well, I got a bunch of things I would like to accomplish. I would like to save money for my kids' education. I'd like to save some money for my retirement. I'd like to go on a vacation. What is most important to me? Let's rank them, and then let's decide where the money goes. And that's kind of the concept. Well, in fact, that is exactly the concept behind budgeting. I decide where it all goes. Now, as you and I have discussed on many occasions, I'm not a fan of budgeting. I think it ends up being kind of a waste of time for a lot of people. But I am a fan of saying, okay, I do want to put this much into my RSP every paycheck, this much into my TFSA, this much into my kids' RESP. I'm just going to every paycheck automatically do it.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? That's savings.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like the no budgeting that you've mentioned. I think there's a YouTube video about that.
I do. I mention it repeatedly.
Yeah,
yes.
And it's just finding an easy way and what works and being realistic with it as well. I mean, at the end of the day, a single person with no kids and not as many obligations as someone with a family is going to be able to potentially put more away than this person here. And their goals are going to be different. Everyone is different. So I think that many people do end up comparing themselves, and then they feel discouraged that they can't save a certain amount or can't put, same as, this family can't do it. Well, everybody's situation is different. Everybody's needs are different. And it's really differentiating the difference between wants and needs in your budget and balance. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, and I agree. Don't compare yourself to anybody else.
No.
It's totally ridiculous. Compare yourself to yourself.
Exactly.
Where was I yesterday? Where do I want to be tomorrow? That's the only benchmark that matters. So, okay, I think that's the framework then for why savings is important.
Right.
It's so that you can decide, where do I want to go?
Yeah.
And then you can decide. And if really, I do want to put aside some money for my kids' education or from my retirement, that means I've got to spend a couple of dollars less today so that I've got it to put aside. And instead of thinking, oh, I'm depriving myself because I can't go and do that thing today. No, what I'm doing is making it possible to do that thing tomorrow.
Exactly.
And if that thing tomorrow isn't as important as doing the thing today, well, then do the thing today.
Exactly.
I totally agree.
Yeah. And I tell everybody, I mean, essentially, to save money, you have to live below your means, not within it. And it's kind of like a light bulb, because at the end of the day, if you balance your budget and everything is paid and you're down to zero, it's really assessing, okay, what can I physically change in this, and what's important to me? I always recommend food, as a lot of people are wasteful with food in general. Just making sure that you can adjust something so that you can save. And I mean, like I said, everybody's different. You decide what you want to do. If you want to pay $300 a month for cable every month, that's great. But what else? What are you sacrificing for that? What are you doing so that you are still able to save and still enjoy?
Yeah, you're the one making the decision. That's
Right.
that's the whole key to this. So,
Right.
okay, now let's get to questions.
Sure.
And these are questions that people have sent in. We've got a Hoyes Michaelis newsletter that goes out to tens of thousands of people every month. We get responses back from that, as well as comments people leave on our various podcasts. So,
Right.
question number one, how can you save if you have a lot of other bills to pay and you're trying to survive? Well, that's basically what I said in the opening, that, hey, look, life is tough. Now, I will make the comment just on what you just said there, that I think the pandemic period, 2020, 2021, was an eye-opener for people, because a lot of us realized, hey, I was spending money on stuff I don't need to spend money on.
Exactly.
So I don't have to go out to eat, back to your example about food, 4 times a week. I wasn't able to for a period of time, and hey, I survived and was actually able to do it more cost effectively. Maybe I don't need a car or a second car, or the car that I've got. Maybe I don't need to buy clothes as often as I thought. So a lot of my expenses have been pared down because I had no choice. I was locked down. I couldn't go anywhere. Great. That has helped free up some money. Lower your expenses gives you that money for savings. But back to the question then. How can you save if you've got a lot of other bills and you're trying to survive?
Well, again, it's really, you just have to go sit down, maybe even once, to sit down and review your budget and see, okay, what can I live without and what can't I live without? So ending up I tell every client, anything is better than zero, anything. When you start seeing that savings grow, usually in the first session when I discuss like budgeting and whatnot with credit counseling, we talk about, okay, you do your budget, see how much you can save, and don't save too much, because then you're going to start taking the money out and feeling discouraged and thinking, geez, well, I just put 200 in there and I needed, 150, and I needed some more. It's being realistic and saying, okay, you know what? If you can do $50, do $50. Increase it by small increments. And in the end, you'll see a result which you'll feel good about, because at the end of the day, you'll see a result. Like it's a physical, I don't know, it's a physical account that you can see on your phone or whatever and say, all my bills are paid and I still have $600 and I have control as to where that goes, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I like that. Start small is what you're saying. And that works in a whole lot of areas in life. Well, I want to get in shape. I'm going to go to the gym 12 hours a day. No, you're not.
Yeah.
Why don't you start by going for a 10-minute walk every day? Okay, well, I can probably do 10 minutes. Okay, good. And once I've done my 10 minutes, well, maybe tomorrow I'll do 12. Yeah. And I think it's the same with savings. Okay, don't try to save $10,000 a month. That's ridiculous. Start with $10, see how that goes, and build from there. So what is a good savings target? Should I go, okay, well, it's got to be, X% of my income? Is that how you do it? How do you decide what a good target is? Or is that even a valuable thing to think about?
I think that when I see clients, it's the same response. So it's a gradual thing. It's baby steps, obviously, to get out of debt. So they've dealt with the debt. Now it's reviewing budget. Now it's saving money, because you don't want to be in debt again and you don't want to use credit for emergencies. So that question gets asked a lot. And like I said before, everybody's different. Everybody's situations are different. And everyone's, budget is different. So with savings, I mean, at the end of the day, it's saving what you can. And typically what ends up happening is that when you see that number grow, you're less likely to pull out of it, because you've worked hard for that. You recognize and you see, okay, I have $600. That's $600 of my money. That's not credit card money. That's not this illusion that I'll just pay it back later, or borrowed cash. It's tangible cash that you're just like, yeah, I can do whatever I want with this, and I don't want to spend it because it's something that you end up working hard for and see a result of. So many people end up increasing their. I say, you know what? Start small. Start, $700. 700 is not small, but once you hit 700, see where you're at after that. Typically, people like to increase those goals because they just want to see it's like, okay, I want to see it get to 1,000. I want to see it to get 2,000. So,
well, the old conventional wisdom was, save 10% of everything you earn. That's the number, 10%. So whatever your paycheck is, the first thing you do is you take 10%, you put it in a savings account. Is that realistic for the clients you meet with?
Not all of them.
Yeah.
Maybe some people. Some people realize, oh, geez, I do spend a lot of money when I go out to eat, because I tell everybody, you're not going out because you crave, not so great burgers and stuff. It's strictly for convenience. That's all you're doing. So it's like, so look at your budget, see how you can adjust that to say, okay, make a meal prep day or crock pots. A lot of people are working from home, so it's a lot easier now. But typically, yeah, I tell people save what you can, but at the end of the day, 10% would be fantastic. It'd be ideal. More than that would be even better. But you have to be realistic again. Just it's such a defeating feeling when you do put 10% away and you continue to use it. And it's for anything, for everyday bills. That everything's not taken care of, but I still have savings. Well, I got to use it. And
yeah, it's got to be a realistic number.
No progression. Yeah, no progression.
I guess our sponsor who sells hamburgers will no longer be a sponsor of this show because Diane says they're not as good as what you can make at home, which is probably true, actually.
It's 100% true.
Probably true. Yeah, I agree. I think saying it's got to be 10% because that's what my parents did is ridiculous. I think start with that small number, whatever it is, and then gradually try to increase it. And you're right, it's very demotivating when I manage to save up a bunch of money, but then I got to draw on it because I need to spend something somewhere else, which is why you got to put it all in piles.
Yeah.
And whether you use the envelope method or the jar method, or you have 12 different savings accounts, which you can do at the online banks now because they're all free.
Exactly.
It doesn't really matter how you do it. It has to be realistic. So you're right. You and I have talked in the past about expenses that are going to come up. You just don't know when.
Exactly.
So yeah, okay, I'm going to need to buy new tires for my car at some point. I don't know if it's today or 6 months or a year from now. I know they're going to cost this much. So why not start putting that money aside now? Mm-hmm. I know that Christmas is going to come up. I know that birthdays are going to come up. I can start saving for that now. That becomes specific savings for a specific thing. And that way, when Christmas does get here, I don't need to tap into my general fund because the money's there. I've got my car repair fund. So I don't need to tap into my general savings when my car breaks down because I've got separate money for that. And I think that's ultimately how you get away from tapping into your savings because I've got other amounts that I can tap into. Again, easier said than done. I get that. But that's the starting point. There's another math concept here. So you've already illustrated one math concept. You got to spend less than you bring in. That's how savings works. There's no magic to that. The other math concept is that compound interest works both ways.
Right.
So if you've got a credit card and you're paying less than the full amount each month, the interest is building up and you're digging yourself deeper and deeper into a hole. But if you have savings and are able to invest it, well, then the interest, the gains are building up. You want to be the one who's lending out the money, not the one borrowing it.
Exactly.
And that's, again, the power of savings. And yes, I get it that interest rates are really low. I don't make any money in my savings. Well, that's another question that's on our list here. So where should I put the money then? So I've managed to save up. I'm putting aside $10 a paycheck. What do I do with it?
Well, everybody's different. You can put it in just a regular savings account like we discussed. I think bringing up the good point of the interest piece, it is not like it was 15 years ago where interest was like 5% or 8%. I don't know if it's ever going to be that high again, but it's not about the interest piece, I think, in the short term. It's about access to funds when you need it. So down the road, with RSPs, or let's say, you have 3 separate accounts. You got a short-term account of your goal is 700, and then you got a long-term account to think, okay, my plan is I want to make sure I have a buffer. So when it's birthdays, Christmas, clothes for the kids, whatever, that's going to come out of that account. And then, you know what, we're really tired. We're doing really great with the savings. Let's do a second account for, we want to take a vacation next year. We want to be okay and not have debt when you go away on vacation, so that you can use those long-term funds. But then when you return from your vacation, you get, you still have access to funds. It's honestly just doing what works for you. If you have to use cash, like you said, jars, envelopes, that's really hard to do. And if you can do it, you're amazing. Or track every receipt you have. Whatever works for you, do it, because and try it. If you're finding one way doesn't work, then try a different way. There's tons of ways to save.
Is it better to put my savings in Bitcoin or Ethereum or one of the altcoins? What do you think?
I'm not going to get into that.
I'm not touching that question.
I'm not going to get into that.
That's a good answer. I think, so what you're saying, if I may paraphrase, is don't worry so much about what the interest is. Worry about the ability to access the funds when you need it.
Yeah.
So my emergency fund, okay, that's there for emergencies. Probably having it in a savings account I can access makes sense. But the longer term stuff, I don't want to be able to access it. I don't want it to be convenient. So if I'm saving for retirement, an RRSP probably makes sense.
Yep.
If I'm saving for my kids' education, an RESP probably makes sense. And those are, harder to get at than if the cash is sitting on the table. If I want a general savings, well, TFSAs are good for that. And okay, you're right. You're probably not earning a huge amount, if anything, on them, but that's not the first point. It's tucking it away so that it's there. And I like all those different things because it's out of sight, out of mind then.
Exactly.
If all my savings are in my bank account that I use to pay my bills, awfully tempting to dip in. Whereas if they're sort of spread around, then a lot less likely that I'm going to get at them. Now, you made the comment about, short-term, long-term. Is there a difference? Do I need to focus on, short-term, medium-term, long-term savings goals, or should I just focus on saving money?
I guess everybody's different. I mean, you do what works, but having a short-term, it's just easier to, I guess, organize your savings. So having an RSP is massive. I mean, and what's funny is that a common question I have with people is, well, what interest am I getting from savings? And it's like, you're not getting anything. This is strictly just to protect yourself so that if something happens, then you're going to be okay. If majority of population had enough money for, rent in April of last year, there wouldn't be this massive news headline that people were living essentially people are living paycheck to paycheck. So it's looking at, okay, I have to organize. I need short-term money because something will happen. I don't know when, but something's going to happen in the next, 2 months, 3 months, next 6 months. And then when you feel comfortable with that amount, then try doing long-term savings. Or, if you want to do a short-term and long-term mixed together, building RSPs at the same time, RESPs. It's savings is just building assets and building wealth for yourself. But yeah, that's the biggest focus that we promote is, okay, you dealt with your debt. Now what's the next step? Build assets. It's not rebuilding your credit, because who cares when you don't need help?
If you got lots of money, the credit is less important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the first dollar is the hardest one.
Exactly.
And the other truth about the way the economy works, the way the system works, is you have to have money to make money.
Exactly.
I hate to tell people that, but that's the way it works. If you've managed to save up $50, pretty much the only thing you can do with it is put it in a savings account that earns essentially zero interest. Once you get to the point where you've saved up $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000, now you've got more options.
Exactly.
Okay, I can buy some ETFs. I can buy some mutual funds. I can, start doing other things with it. I can put it in GICs. You've got more options. And once you've got 10,000, 50,000, or 10 million like you, Diane, then you've got your team of advisors there who can figure out where to put all the money, right?
Exactly.
So focus on building up the cash first.
Yeah.
And then great, you can worry about how you're going to deploy it. It's the savings that's the key thing.
Yeah, and it's honestly just it's really trying to be positive about it, because a lot of people are, well, I just got $50 in there. Like when I see people in second session, I'm like, how's your budget going? Do we need to review to see, okay, what's other ways we can try to save? And they say, well, I only got $500. I'm like, would you give me $500? I'll take it. I'll gladly take it. But no, it's changing that mindset that anything is better than zero.
Yeah,
that's
I think
the biggest thing.
That's kind of a key right there. Anything is better than zero. And when you're talking about the sessions, what you're talking about is the 2 counseling sessions that are part of every bankruptcy or consumer proposal.
That's right.
All of our clients come back to see you or whoever the counselor is 2 times. The first one within the first couple of months of when they filed, and then the second one a few months after that. And you get to see the progression.
Exactly.
Because the person's quite nervous when they start, and by the end of the second session, it's, wow, I've really, really learned a lot. So my final question to you, give me some practical things that you talk about at those sessions with respect to savings. So how can I save money without even noticing it?
So I always say, again, when we're starting small, I say, okay, look at your budget and see, can you survive without $25 every paycheck? Yeah, I think I can. Perfect. Why not automate that out? Why not do, you can call up your bank and do an automatic transfers coming out every time you get paid, the money's getting paid, similar to automatically paying your bills. So once you get paid, everything is paid, and that's what you have left is for food, gas, or whatever. But automatically putting money away is very useful.
So I go into my banking app.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do this. You'll have to show me after the show because I don't know how to do it on the phone. But I can probably could figure it out on the computer. So I say, okay, I know that every payday is every other Friday. Mm-hmm. So I've decided I'm not going to overshoot here. I'm going to take $10 and I'm going to automatically transfer it to my savings account or my TFSA or my RSP or whatever it is. So I set it up. So when I go to my app, I look at my bank account on payday, that $10 is already gone.
Right.
It's
and
out.
Yes, to your savings.
To my savings account.
Yes. So, and slowly start increasing it from there. I said, see how you are with $10, increase it to 20. Again, everybody's situation is different. Like, a single mom with a couple of kids, I'd say, just start small and slowly put money in, because when you slowly see that progression, maybe it's going to, what I've seen is that people end up spending less because they want to see that get bigger. And it's like, okay, I'm actually able to not spend $10, $5 a week, essentially. It's like, okay, can you increase that? And if you're finding that you're dipping into it at a certain point, you've put in too much. So just back down to what you initially had and just consistently tell yourself that, it's hard for people to be positive, but just be positive and say, okay, I did this. This is fantastic. And I mean, it's honestly just being proactive and starting now. Yeah.
And set yourself up for success. Rig the game in your favor.
Exactly.
I am a huge believer in cheating. I think that's what you want to do. You want to cheat so that you win the game.
Yeah.
Okay. How do I do that? Well, okay, I'm only going to put aside only $10.
Yes, that's the key word, only.
Only. It's only $10. Okay, well, $10 is a big number, but that's what I'm going to do because I know I can do that. $100, I can't do that. $1,000, I definitely can't do that. But $10, I can do that.
Exactly.
Well, guess what? I did it. I won the game. Next time, let's do another $10. And maybe you start off by putting the money into a savings account, and then after a month, okay, now I start transferring it to a TFSA.
Yeah.
I start transferring it to an RSP. But I've set a goal that's realistic enough that, I can't lose kind of a thing. And I've also got other money that's in the emergency fund, so I don't have to be tapping into that. So I'm setting myself up for success. Again, it's like I'm going to go for a 10-minute walk today, not a 40-minute walk, not a 2-hour walk. I really like your point as well. Anything is better than zero. That is a huge thing. So, okay, any final practical tips, practical advice you want to give to people? And I'm glad we're talking big picture here because I don't want to get into the weeds about, well, here's the spreadsheet you should use and here's the type of pen you should use to keep track of it and here's the app. I mean, a lot of the different banks have spending apps right on the banking. They
have savings in the apps. Like I know we're not endorsing Tangerine or anything or sponsored.
But if they want to sponsor
but
us.
Hey, but they have like a really neat savings idea. they have it so that, like, every time you buy a coffee, let's move a little bit, 20 cents or something like that over to a savings. Okay, how about every time your sports team wins, you can put $25 away. Kind of like it just tries to find different ways to help you. It also has the option where it's like that reverse savings of, every week you put away $1, and then the second week of January you put away $2, and so on until week 52, and you have like $1,300.
And by week 90, you're putting aside $9 million, so that the compounding doesn't quite work.
Though I tell people go backwards with that, because it's a lot easier to save $52 at the beginning of January than like 200 plus than in. That's
a good idea.
At Christmas.
So I think, and you're right, we aren't endorsing anybody in particular here, but if you're already at a bank, see what's on their app. Maybe you can already use something. There's a whole bunch of other apps out there. Well, do a bit of research, see what works for you, talk to your friends.
Yeah.
It's got to work for you. Some people like to keep track of it on a book, in a spending journal. Some people like to have a spreadsheet.
They like cash. I'll just put it like another visual. Just put it in this envelope. Just a quick story. I did have a couple once that misinterpreted what I said in a budget, which ended up backfiring in a good way, because what I said was, you can use the envelope system, which they wanted to try. But what they were doing was they were spending their money, but they weren't paying the bills. I can't even remember how they misinterpreted what I said, but they would say, okay, I used $50 for gas, but I'm going to take $50 out of my savings and put it in, or out of my checking account and put it in an envelope. So by the time I saw them by the second session, I was like, wait a second. Every time you're using money, you're putting it in this envelope, the same amount, you're matching dollar for dollar. And they're like, I guess. And I said, geez. And I calculated, I'm like, you have $6,000 in an envelope. You should be doing something with that. But they honestly had no idea, because they got used to it. And I said, you know what? That is working for you. That is fantastic. Keep doing it. But I just thought it was so funny, because it's just like they didn't realize we have so much money in there. It's like an IOU to myself. Okay, if I spend this, I have to pay myself that amount as well.
Yeah, most people can't mathematically afford to do that. But
no.
we're dealing with people who have gone through a bankruptcy or proposal. They come in to see us and they've got $50,000 or $60,000 worth of debt.
Mm-hmm.
And so their debt payments alone were $1,000 or $2,000 a month.
Exactly.
And so when you take those debt payments away, now all of a sudden they do have a ton of cash.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. And if you also give up, buying coffee and lunches out and all the rest of it, there is a huge amount of cash that some people can free up. So it's
so satisfying to see when people just feel really good. They're like, I'm so happy I have money. And because I said, when's the last time you had that? You didn't, because you're constantly paying down debt or you haven't budgeted. So it's really important to start saving anytime. Like I would say right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Well, I think that's an excellent way to end it. Start saving right now. Anything is better than zero, and automate it as best you can. I think that's another huge point, that the savings should be automated. All your bills should be automated. Well, then the money is accounted for before you can do anything else with it.
Exactly.
Excellent. Diane, thank you very much. I think that's some great advice
you.
today. That is our show for today. We've got lots of information over at hoys.com on different ways of budgeting, ways to save money. But I think the key point is figure out something that works for you.
Exactly.
Start small, automate it, and it all should ultimately work out.
Exactly.
Diane, thanks very much.
Thank you.
That is our show for today. Thanks for listening. Until next week, I'm Doug Hoys. That was Debt Free in 30.